Picture this, a crystal wine glass tilting in slow motion, deep red liquid cascading through the air, splashing across an immaculate black suit, a room full of millionaires frozen in shock, a woman standing there with a smile that says she's untouchable, and a man, wine dripping from his face, who simply wipes his eyes and says 5 words that will haunt her forever. You have no idea what you've just done. That moment, caught on a dozen phones, is about to destroy an empire. If you believe karma is real, type justice in the comments right now and smash that like button, because what happens next will restore your faith that the universe keeps score. This is the story of how one act of cruelty at a charity gala brought a millionaire's world crashing down in less than 72 hours. Marcus Thompson wasn't supposed to be there that night, at least not in Victoria Sterling's mind. She saw a black man in an expensive suit, and her brain couldn't compute it. When he accidentally brushed past her reaching for an appetizer, she didn't just overreact, she erupted. The entire ballroom heard her vicious words, watched her question whether he'd stolen that suit, saw her eyes narrow with a hatred she didn't even try to hide. Security hesitated, unsure who to protect. The crowd held its breath, and then she grabbed her wine glass and poured it over his head like he was nothing, like he was invisible, like consequences didn't exist. She told security to remove the help. Marcus stood there, red wine mixing with the shock on his face, and every phone in that room was recording. He didn't shout, he didn't curse. He just looked at her with something like pity and walked toward the exit with his head high. Victoria laughed and returned to her champagne. She had no idea she'd just ended everything. What Victoria didn't know as she clinked glasses with her wealthy friends was that Marcus Thompson wasn't just some random guest who'd wandered into her exclusive world. He was the CEO of Technova Solutions, a company worth $200 million that had spent 6 months negotiating a $50 million development deal with her husband's real estate empire. She humiliated the one man who was about to save Sterling Properties from its mounting debts. By the time she woke up the next morning, the video had 17 million views. Her phone was exploding with notifications she didn't understand yet, messages from friends asking if she'd lost her mind, texts from her husband that just said, "Call me now," in all caps. She scrolled through Twitter and saw her face everywhere, her name trending worldwide, strangers dissecting every frame of her cruelty. Then Richard called, his voice shaking with a rage she'd never heard before, and told her Marcus had withdrawn from the partnership that morning with one sentence: "Sterling Properties does not align with our values." $50 million gone with 5 words, but that was just the beginning of her nightmare. By noon, 3 major investors had pulled out of Sterling Properties, citing reputational damage they couldn't afford. By evening, the charity board had voted unanimously to remove Victoria from her position, issuing a public apology to Marcus. By midnight, 2 banks were calling in loans Richard had personally guaranteed, loans he'd taken because he was counting on the Technova deal. The penthouse they loved, the vacation homes, the cars, the lifestyle, all of it was mortgaged against a future that had just evaporated. And then the divorce papers arrived. Within 1 week, Victoria Sterling went from charity galas to legal depositions, from penthouse views to packing boxes in silence. Richard's divorce filing was brutal and public, his lawyers making it clear he was cutting ties with the woman who destroyed his life's work with a glass of wine and unchecked hatred. The lawsuit Marcus filed wasn't about money. He donated every penny to scholarships for minority entrepreneurs, but about sending a message that dignity matters and cruelty costs. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to Marcus. That video that should have been his worst moment became his greatest testimony. Business leaders reached out offering partnerships, investors called wanting to back his vision, and major publications featured his story not as a victim, but as an example of grace under fire. His company's value doubled because people saw how he handled hatred with quiet strength. Technova became more than a tech company. It became a statement. The charity that hosted that terrible night created the Marcus Thompson Fellowship, funding 50 entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds every year. Victoria lost everything: her marriage, her money, her social circle, even her identity as someone who mattered. She poured wine on a man she thought was beneath her and discovered too late that worth has nothing to do with skin color and everything to do with character. Marcus never gloated, never celebrated her downfall, just kept building and creating opportunities for others. Because that's the difference. She saw color and felt superior. He saw humanity and chose dignity. Type justice in the comments if this moved you. Hit subscribe for more stories where karma keeps perfect score. And remember, cruelty always costs more than you think you can afford.